By age 80, more than half of American adults are too weak to pass a simple grip strength test, 53%. That number comes from the CDC's National Health Survey, and it always stops me because the muscle behind that weakness didn't vanish in one bad fall or one illness. It drained out slowly, one underpowered meal at a time, for years before anyone noticed. And here's the part almost nobody is told. After 60, your muscles stop hearing protein the way they used to. You can eat the exact same lunch you've eaten for 30 years, and less of it now reaches your legs. 5 plant foods can fix that signal. No meat and no powder required. And the one that does it best surprises almost everyone. I've spent years in emergency medicine, and the patients who scare me most aren't the dramatic ones. They're the ones who came in after a small stumble that turned into a broken hip. And when I look back, the weakness was building quietly for a decade. So let me show you what's really happening, because it changes what you should put on your plate tonight. Doctors call this shift anabolic resistance. Strip away the term, and it means something simple. Your muscle cells have grown a little hard of hearing. Protein still arrives, but the signal that tells the muscle to rebuild is now muffled. Think of a doorbell that used to ring at a normal press, and now needs a firm, deliberate push before anyone inside reacts. In your 30s, a light press was enough. In your 70s, a light press does almost nothing. This is why muscle quietly slips away with age. Starting around 30, the National Institutes of Health estimates most adults lose somewhere between 3 and 8% of their muscle every decade. And after 60, that loss speeds up. It shows up in the ordinary things first: rising from a low chair, steadying yourself on a curb, carrying groceries up the porch steps. None of that is helplessness. It's a signaling problem, and signaling problems have solutions. And here's something most people get backwards. Strength fades even faster than size. You can lose the power in a muscle 2 to 3 times quicker than you lose its actual bulk, which is why someone can look about the same in the mirror at 70 and still struggle to open a jar or climb a single flight of stairs. The mirror reassures you while the strength quietly leaves. This is exactly the kind of slow drift I wish more people caught early, because it is far easier to hold on to muscle than to rebuild it from a hospital bed. Here is the single idea I most want you to send to your father, or keep for yourself, because it reframes everything. It is not mainly how much protein you eat in a whole day that protects your legs. It is whether each individual meal crosses a threshold high enough to flip the switch. Miss that threshold at breakfast, and most of that protein gets burned for fuel instead of rebuilding muscle. Cross it, and the muscle finally hears you. What is the threshold? Research on aging muscle points to roughly 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal for older adults, carrying about 3 grams of a specific amino acid called leucine. Leucine is the actual finger on the doorbell. A systematic review of muscle protein studies found that about 3 grams of leucine per meal is the amount needed to fully wake up muscle building in older adults, while younger people get away with far less. That single fact explains why the light breakfast, light lunch, big dinner pattern so many people fall into is quietly starving their muscles. One meal crosses the line. The other 2 don't ring the bell at all. It helps to know the daily total you're aiming at, too. The old standard most of us grew up with, about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, was set to prevent deficiency, not to protect aging muscle. A group of physicians and researchers who study protein in older people, the PROT-AGE group, recommends healthy older adults aim higher, closer to 1 to 1.2 grams per kilogram. In plain terms, for someone around 150 pounds, that's roughly 68 to 80 grams a day. And the easiest way to reach it is not one giant dinner, but 3 meals that each clear the bar. Oatmeal made with fortified soy milk and a spoon of tahini in the morning. Lentils over rice at lunch. Tofu or tempeh at dinner. Do that, and you've pressed the doorbell 3 times without counting a single number. So the goal isn't just to eat plant protein. It's to build meals that press the doorbell firmly, 3 times a day. Now I'm going to rank 5 plant foods from the gentlest signal to the strongest, so you know exactly which ones to lean on. I'll give you the protein, the cost, and how to use each one without cooking a special meal. And number 1 genuinely surprises people, because it hides in the freezer aisle looking like a snack. Let's start at number 5, the gentlest of the group, tahini. Tahini is simply ground sesame seed paste, and on protein alone it's modest, about 3 grams per tablespoon. So why is it on the list at all? Because for a lot of older adults, the real barrier isn't willpower, it's chewing and appetite. Firm, chewy protein can feel like a chore. Tahini is smooth and spoonable, and it slips extra nutrition into food you're already eating without asking your jaw to do anything. Every spoonful brings healthy, unsaturated fats for steady energy and over 60 milligrams of calcium for your bones. Instead of butter on warm, whole-grain toast, spread tahini. Whisk 1 spoonful together with a little lemon and warm water for a 2-minute dressing. No blender needed. Stir it into a soup right before serving, and it thickens like cream. Think of tahini as the quiet helper that makes every other meal work a little harder. It won't ring the doorbell on its own, but it raises the floor everywhere. Number 4 is a can most of you already have in the cupboard: black beans. 1 cooked cup delivers about 15 grams of protein, real fiber for digestion, and 3 milligrams of iron to help with daytime energy. Here's a small trick that matters more than it sounds. The iron in beans is the kind your body absorbs poorly on its own, so pair it with a little vitamin C, sliced bell pepper, tomato, or a squeeze of lime, and absorption climbs. A can costs as little as 80 cents. For dinner, warm them in a pan with diced tomato, cumin, and a handful of greens for a fast, thick stew. For lunch, rinse a can and toss with red onion, cilantro, and lime. 15 grams gets you more than halfway to the threshold, and pairing it with rice, which I'll come back to, carries it the rest of the way. Number 3 steps the signal up again: dry lentils. A 1-pound bag runs $1 or $2 and feeds you for days. And 1 cooked cup gives you about 18 grams of protein plus 17 milligrams of calcium. What makes lentils so practical after 60 is the texture. They cook down soft and are gentle on digestion, no heavy chewing. Here's the habit that changes everything. Boil 1 big pot on Sunday. Once cooked, they keep in the refrigerator for up to 5 days, ready to scoop into whatever you're already making. Monday, stir a cup into soup for 18 instant grams. Tuesday, toss them cold with cucumber, tomato, and lemon. Wednesday, layer them into a warm grain bowl. You stop cooking protein from scratch every night, and you stop skipping it on the tired days, which are exactly the days muscle loss wins. Now we reach number 2, and this is where the signal gets strong enough to stand on its own: the soy family, meaning tofu and tempeh. Here's a fact worth pausing on. Most plant foods are missing 1 or 2 of the essential building blocks your body can't make. Soy is different. It's a complete protein, all 9 essentials in one food, and its quality sits right alongside meat and dairy. A half cup of diced tofu in a stir-fry gives you 10 grams and is soft and easy to chew. Tempeh, the firmer, nuttier, fermented version, is the heavyweight. 1 cup of sliced baked tempeh delivers a remarkable 34 grams of protein, enough to clear the per-meal threshold by itself. A block of tofu is about $2, tempeh around $3, both far cheaper than beef or chicken. I know what some of you are thinking, that you could never give up meat. And I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to make sure 1 soy-based meal a day presses the doorbell hard, so a single strong meal covers you even when the others fall short. And let me clear up the worry I hear most about soy, that it somehow messes with your hormones. The plant compounds in soy are not the same as human estrogen, and large reviews in adults have not found that ordinary food amounts, a cup of soy milk, a block of tofu, a bowl of edamame, disrupt hormones in men or women. What the research does show is a food that supports muscle and heart health. The trouble only starts with heavily concentrated supplement doses, not with real food on a plate. Eat soy as food, and it earns its spot near the top of this list. And number 1, the surprise, is edamame, young green soybeans sold frozen in the pod. On paper, it looks like a bar snack. In your body, it's the strongest muscle signal on this list, because it's dense in the one thing that matters most after 60, leucine. A single cup of cooked edamame carries about 18 grams of protein and close to 2 grams of leucine, pushing right toward that 3-gram doorbell threshold from a food you eat with your fingers. A bag costs around $2. Microwave a bowl for 3 minutes, sprinkle a little salt, and eat it straight from the pod. Or buy it pre-shelled and toss a handful into rice, salad, or soup. No chopping, no recipe, no stove. That's what surprises people. The food that best fights age-related muscle loss isn't a slab of steak or a scoop of powder. It's a green pod you can keep in the freezer and grab in 3 minutes. Now, what if a single food doesn't quite reach the threshold on its own? You pair. This is the oldest trick in plant cooking, and it's pure signal engineering. Warm black beans with a scoop of rice make a complete protein, because the beans bring the building block called leucine, and the rice brings the one called methionine, and together they fill each other's gaps. Chickpea hummus on whole grain bread does the same thing. A cup of calcium-fortified soy yogurt, topped with a small scatter of sliced almonds, gives you complete protein plus leucine plus bone minerals in one bowl. None of this requires cooking. You're just stacking 2 ordinary foods, so the meal, together, presses the doorbell. Now let me be honest with you, because your trust matters more to me than a tidy story. Plant proteins have one real disadvantage. Gram for gram, your body absorbs them slightly less efficiently than meat, and most carry a little less leucine. That is exactly why the threshold thinking matters, and why the honest fix is simple. Aim a touch higher and lean on the strongest options, soy and edamame, and complementary pairs. Clinical trials back this up. Older adults on well-planned plant diets build muscle just as well as those eating meat. The building blocks are all there. You just have to assemble the meal so it clears the bar. You also don't need expensive powders. Whole foods are the better foundation, and a powder is only a convenience for days your appetite is low. The bigger daily habit isn't math. It's spreading protein evenly across breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so you press that doorbell 3 times instead of flooding it once at supper. And a word of care. If you have kidney disease or another condition that affects how much protein is safe for you, don't guess. Ask your primary care doctor or a registered dietitian for your personal number before you change anything. This matters most for a few people in particular, so listen for yourself here. If you live alone and cook for one, protein is usually the first thing that quietly falls off the plate, because a full meal feels like too much effort for one person. That's exactly why a bag of frozen edamame and a couple of cans of beans in the cupboard are so protective. They turn a 2-minute effort into a real, threshold-crossing meal. If you've lost weight without trying, or you've caught yourself reaching for the handrail more often, treat that as your body ringing its own alarm, and act now rather than later. And if you're already managing type 2 diabetes, here's a quiet bonus. These same foods, the beans, the lentils, the soy, steady your blood sugar while they protect your muscle. 1 plate, 2 problems handled at once. Here's how to actually track this at home, no lab required. Try the 30-second chair stand test, the same one the CDC uses to check strength and fall risk. Sit in a sturdy chair, arms crossed over your chest, and count how many times you can stand fully and sit back down in 30 seconds. For most adults in their 60s, somewhere in the low teens is a reasonable marker, and fewer than that is worth attention. Write your number down today, then test again in 8 weeks. That single number tells you whether your legs are holding or slipping, far earlier than a fall ever will. And one small multiplier, after a protein-rich meal, take a 10-minute walk or do a few slow chair stands. Movement is the volume knob. It tells the muscle to actually use what you just fed it. You don't need a gym or a rack of weights for this. Standing up from a chair without pushing off with your hands 10 times in a row is real resistance training. So is carrying the groceries in from the car yourself in 2 trips instead of handing the job to someone else. Your muscles can't tell the difference between a dumbbell and a bag of oranges. They only feel the load, and load is the signal that turns a good meal into stronger legs. So if you remember one thing, remember the doorbell. Muscle loss after 60 isn't mainly about willpower or how much you eat in a day. It's whether each meal presses the switch hard enough, about 25 to 30 grams of protein and roughly 3 grams of leucine 3 times a day. Rank your plate by signal strength. Tahini to raise the floor, black beans and lentils for a solid base, tofu and tempeh for a strong single meal, and edamame, the freezer aisle surprise, for the strongest push of all. Pair foods when one falls short. Track your chair stands. Walk after you eat. You do not need to be perfect here, and you do not need to overhaul your kitchen this week. You're looking for the pattern, not perfection. One swap tomorrow. Soy milk on your oatmeal. A handful of edamame with lunch is a real signal your muscles will hear. A man I treated, a retired mail carrier in his early 70s from Dayton, told me he ate fine and still couldn't push himself up out of his garden anymore. He didn't need more discipline. He needed his meals to ring louder. Within a couple of months of front-loading protein at breakfast, he was getting up on his own again. So tell me, which of these 5 will you add first, tomorrow? Drop it in the comments. It helps someone else in this community take the same first step. Your very next meal is the place to start. Make it ring.